Well, Rovers, time to start sealing these and the bunks and getting them installed. My name's Alan Mulholland, and this is the story of how I built the Wave Rover 650. 3 years ago, I refitted a 40-year-old Contessa 26 and took her on an amazing 7,800 nautical mile ocean voyage. We crossed the Atlantic twice, but a knockdown on the second crossing and COVID-19 put an end to my solo circumnavigation. So now, I'm building a new boat, smaller, lighter, but more suited for a solo circumnavigation. The Wave Rover 650. Well, Rovers, in this video, it's going to be all about coating the bunks and the crash bulkheads with S1 epoxy and then installing them. So once they're installed, those areas are done. Anyway, there's a lot to do. Time to crack on. Well, Rovers, I am ready in all respects to start using the S1 epoxy to paint all these pieces, and there's quite a few. I mean, I only have this space available to me for about 24 hours, all this extra space, so I really have to make good use of it. Now, one of the things that I want to bring everybody's attention to is you really have to use this S1 in really well ventilated areas. There's a lot of solvents in this, and I'll also be wearing this organic filter mask. Okay, so let's go take a look inside the boat. I have that ready too. Now this area is more of a confined space, which really necessitates the need to have an organic filter mask. And also, I will be running a fan to make sure the ventilation is much better here than it was last time I used S1. Now, this area, the bunks, inside the bunks, that's getting S1. And also, the areas in here, the crash bulkheads, they're getting S1. And of course, up forward here, right here in the forward crash bulkhead, we'll be putting S1 down inside here. But we're only taking the S1 up to the height of the crash bulkheads because we want a fiberglass after that, so I've already prepped the wood for that. All right, let's crack on mixing this, and if you want to know how that works, I'm going to put a little segment in that shows how I mixed it last time.
Well, that went pretty well. Big difference wearing these things. You know, it's the last time I was being overcome by the vapors. This time, no problem. All right, time to crack on with the next step, which is the second coat.
Well, I'm really happy with how this turned out. 2 coats are on all the surfaces right now, and let's just take a quick look here. So this just needs a little bit of sanding in places like this, which I have marked pretty well. So I've just did a tiny bit of test sanding. I don't know if you can see how it looks dull between these two lines, but I have to do that whenever you see these two lines, because that's where it's going to get glued onto the cleats. Now, over here on the fir plywood, well, you can really feel how the grain has been raised, and we'll have to give that surface a little sanding as well. But overall, I have to say, very, very happy with this. It was a big job. We took advantage of the weather, and I took advantage of the space that I have here. So, yeah, very happy. Let's go inside Wave Rover, go inside the womb, take a look at Wave Rover, and just see how the areas inside fared. Okay, so these areas that you can see right here, basically the matrix that the bunk will sit on, that all has 2 coats on the inside as well. And quite happy with how that turned out. I had a little extra left over, so I did these areas as well, including the beams. Let's go see the crash bulkhead area now. So this area has all been painted, just like on the port side and also the forepeak. So we're ready in all respects after a little bit of sanding to install these. Okay, so we have 2 coats of S1 on this, and you can just feel that it feels quite rough. And that's because the fibers lift up whenever you put a thin product like varnish or S1 or anything that really penetrates the wood causes that to happen. Now, we know there are 2 coats of S1 on here, so we're absolutely fine with the amount of protection it has, but I do want to remove those little hairs, and you just give it a very light sanding. This is 120, and that's all that's required to remove those raised fibers. You don't want to sand too much because that just erases all your good work. But honestly, that's all. You just barely touch it with the sandpaper. Okay, excellent. Now this piece of wood, of course, that'll be the same. And just the end pieces here, need just a bit of curvature. Okay, now the final bit of this is we have to make sure that the bit that's getting glued, which is this edge, and this edge, they all need to have about 3/4 of an inch of sanded surface. So to do that, just take a little bit of sandpaper. And the camera may not be able to see it, but I can see a definite dullness between here and where I haven't sanded heavily. And that's what you want to see. So I'll be using Titebond 3 to glue this to the cleats, but then on the top side of this, after it's installed, then I'll be putting fillets all the way around in fiberglass. So, and there's also a few screws holding it down. So this truly is quite bulletproof. Keep the pressure light on your sandpaper when you're doing this, because the S1 takes about 7 days to harden. This is only a day and a half that it's been on, and it's just that I have to move this right now, so I have to install it. As long as you keep your pressure light, you will give yourself a keyway. If you press too hard, you'll notice that it'll start to gum up. So whenever you see little bits of S1 that may turn into a little sliver, just remove that. But if you sand lightly, you'll be fine. So there's some of that gumming up. I don't know if you can see it, but it's not in the sandpaper because we're sanding lightly. Okay, looks good. Okay, let's just take a quick look at what we have done and what we're going to do today. So this is the forward crash bulkhead. So we're going to be putting a fillet all the way around and glassing this today. It's already secured in place. All the screw holes have been filled, so we're ready to go on that. Now, let's just take a look over here at what we've done. Okay, so the bunks are all secured. They're glued in place. They're screwed down, and I've got the hatch covers in place. Now, just before anybody might ask, they will get some sort of latch system to keep them in place should Wave Rover ever capsize. We don't want any of the heavy items that are going to be in these storage areas flying around. So anyway, this is a lot of storage when you consider there's 5 bays and then 5 more over here. And really, you know, if you are new to the channel, these 5 bays, let me see if I can open this. Each one of these bays, in fact, is a watertight compartment. So, I mean, if you took, and also the, let's see if we can see it. No, it's too dark in there. But the water line is actually well below the top of the bunk. So the in the case of taking damage below the water line, it will be very limited. Now we'll just work our way aft a little further. And what we have here are our crash bulkheads in the port and starboard quarter. So these also today, that's part of our work order, is we're going to be putting a fillet all the way around and then glassing all the way around, both this one and of course the one on the port side. Well, it's the next day. Let's check our workout. Just head back here to the port and starboard quarter, and let's see, we'll look through our little inspection hatch area, and yeah, we're looking pretty good. The fillet, the glass, and the layer of epoxy that I put over top of the ply all seem to have worked out. Here's the other side. So yeah, pretty good. And then of course I also did the forepeak area. Let's see, that's way, let me see if I can control the camera better. So way up there. Now if I had to do it again, I would break what I did yesterday over 2 days. It was just a little much to be able to wet out these areas, put the fillet in these areas, because that's a lot of fillet really when you consider the 3 areas I did, and put the glass on all in one go. And unless I had help, you know, in the past I've done bigger fiberglassing jobs like this, but it's always been with Mrs. Rover's help. So this time around, yeah, doing it all by myself, I would break it into two, and I will do that when I go to do the bunks here. So here, let's just take a look at the bunks. I'll tell you what I'm going to do. So I'm going to put a fillet all around the edges of these, just like I did with the crash bulkheads, and then fiberglass will go on top of these with the added application of the peel ply. And the reason for that is because this will be an exposed area where I'll be painting the surfaces, and the peel ply will just make that so much easier. Plus, it's an area that I'll be, so just the rough edges of ply without the peel ply doesn't really appeal to anybody. Hey, get it? Peel ply appeal. Anyway, I've rounded over the edges here of the bunk, and that will get glassed as well. And then once that has happened, really, I mean, I had mentioned it already, but what we're looking at is 5 little watertight compartments. Well, I won't say watertight compartments because the lids or the hatches here, they're obviously not watertight, but they are about 3 or 4 inches above the water line. So if there is a hole at the water line or below and water comes in, it can really only stay in one of these bays. The hole would have to be a big long gouge to fill up several of them. But even so, it's still contained. And then my plan is, it wouldn't take much effort at all just to take some extra poly with me and just lay it in here, put the lid back on, put a few screws in, and then you'd have a pretty good solution until you can get to port and get a proper fix done. Anyway, just a few of the ideas that are popping through my head. Now I have to go and make the fillet, and this time around that's all I'm going to do is just the fillet, fair the fillet, let it harden, then I'll come back the next day and do the fiberglass. Well, a lot to do, time to crack on. Okay, so it's about a day later, and let's just check out how those fillets turned out for us. Let's see. Well, they look really good. And I'm just going to stick my hand in here and just see how much of the fillet came out. Okay, I've got nothing right there. Oh yeah, there we go. Okay, so we have, yeah, lots of it. So probably about 50% of that fillet that we're looking at right here came right through to the underside. It's just protruding below the level of that, and that's good and strong. So now the job today is to put a keyway on this. It just needs a very, very light sanding because it's so smooth. And then we'll glass that up with Mrs. Rover's help. She's back and she'll be giving me a hand, and that'll make the glassing job go so much better. All right, let's crack on. I'd like to take a moment to honor the Wave Rover benefactors. So what is a benefactor? Well, these folks have made a contribution of $100 US or more to the project, and their names will be affixed to a bulkhead inside Wave Rover and will be traveling with me on our circumnavigation. Now, these donations truly are much appreciated. Well, Rovers, the crash bulkheads and the bunks, I'm happy to say, are complete. I'm happy with the job. They've been filleted, they've been fiberglassed, and they got 2 coats of S1 on the inside, plus all the fiberglassing that was done before that. Those areas are complete as far as I'm concerned. And I'm moving on to the next big push, and that is the after deck. So basically from the transom forward to where the cabin will start. That's what the next series of videos will be all about. Now, of course, there are other things other than a deck that need to be taken care of. There are deck beams and some bulkheads that need to be finished. Anyway, really looking forward to it. I assure you this is all going to be very interesting stuff. But for now, thanks for watching. Well, the Wave Rover patrons, with their pledges of support, really do make the creation of these videos possible. Now, if you'd like to know more about Wave Rover's patron page and benefactors bulkhead, I have links to both those pages in the video description. Now, another way to help Wave Rover, and it doesn't cost you a dime, is by sharing our content on your social media. So now, as always, Rovers, thanks for watching. Give us one more. Brilliant.